Today we commemorate Crime Victims' Rights Week, and we celebrate 25 years of rebuilding victims' lives with the assistance of the Victims of Crime Act. When it was first passed by Congress and signed by President Reagan in 1984, the Victims of Crime Act, known as VOCA, did two very important things. For the very first time, federal law recognized that victims have rights. And it also provided funding to support victim services. Now, this funding is not taxpayer dollars. This money comes from fines that are paid in federal court. And that stream of funding last year helped collect over $1 billion to assist victims. That money is distributed among the states to help cover part of the cost of crime victim compensation programs, and also to provide the victim service professionals whom for the last 25 years have been there when we really needed them. That funding helped support the transformation of a field that had been made up largely of a grassroots movement of volunteers and transformed into a highly professionalized field. And that transformation will continue. We can look back at the progress we've made over the last 25 years. The Victims of Crime Act started the ball rolling, but it was really up to us to keep it moving forward. Many of the advances in victims' rights have been led by crime victims from right here in Northern Virginia. Because even though once we had victims' rights on the books in Virginia, Virginia was still one of only 2 states where victim impact testimony could only be submitted in writing. We changed that so that victims could offer oral testimony in front of the jury during the sentencing phase of the trial. Victims were routinely excluded from the courtroom, but we changed that. Victims didn't have the right to confer with the prosecutor about potential plea agreements, but we changed that. Victims weren't notified by the police that they even had rights, but we changed that. I can remember one woman whose sister was murdered, and she was the victim's only surviving relative. But the Department of Corrections couldn't release to her information on the status of the offender because siblings were not included in the statutory definition of victim. And yes, we changed that one too. Over the last 25 years, we've made great strides in understanding the dynamics of various types of victimization. And we began to recognize the special circumstances of victims of domestic violence, child sex abuse, stalking, human trafficking, and identity theft. And as we continue to learn the different special needs and the different ways in which criminals can prey on victims, we'll continue to craft laws and services to increase victim safety and help them rebuild their lives. All of these changes were brought about by victims, and we were encouraged by victim service professionals who told us that if we wanted to see things change, we had the power to make them change. And for many of us, that was part of our path to healing and recovery. And though we continue to move towards a greater professionalization of this field, progress depends on the continued partnership among victim service providers empowering victims to make change. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot to be done. Here in Virginia, we still do not do enough to track and collect the restitution that offenders are supposed to pay to victims. We have no compliance measures that lays out what should happen when a victim's legal rights are not recognized, rendering them a right without a remedy. And at the birth of the victims' rights movement, there were some prosecutors and some in law enforcement who thought, great, now that we have victim advocates, we won't have to deal with the victims anymore. Well, instead, victim advocates have largely convinced just about everybody in the criminal justice system that they all have a role to play in serving victims. But even if we have the whole criminal justice system on board, it's still not enough. We know that victims need good doctors and good lawyers and good mental health therapists. But nearly all those professionals continue to graduate from school without learning anything about the victims of crime that they'll face in their careers. And we're working to change that. This week, we pause to honor those who have been victims of crime and to rededicate ourselves to the proposition that all victims of crime must be afforded a full measure of justice. And here to lead us is our good friend, Gail Pennybuck, who as a television journalist has set a wonderful example for the media's responsibility to victims of crime. She's told our stories with sensitivity and compassion while preserving victims' right to privacy and dignity during the darkest moments of our lives. And for that, we are deeply grateful. Please welcome Gail Pennybuck.